Questions of Doom.
Hello and welcome back to another Questions of Doom. In this series, as ever, I attempt to answer questions that you send my way using the archaeosoup@gmail.com emailing address, as displayed on the YouTube channel homepage, but also as you'll see at the end of this video. In answering these questions by video, it is my fond hope that the answer is not only useful to the person who has asked the question, but also anyone else out there who may be wondering the same thing. Now, today's question is the type of question that usually I try to avoid answering by video. I usually may send out an email if I want to answer it, and it's a question about me. But in this instance, I thought not only is it a nice question to sort of ease my way back into the swing of things in 2013, but also as well, this actually may engender very interesting conversations in the comments below, with different people's experiences being shared and hopefully different paths and ideas being learned. So the question goes like this. Dear Mr. Soup, you recently answered a question of doom exploring how a father might encourage his son to pursue his interest in archaeology. In this video, you briefly mentioned castle visits and your own experiences exploring these places with your family. I seem to recall I was talking about Conwy Castle in that video, or specifically Conwy Castle. This got me curious. Could you possibly talk more about what inspired you to get into archaeology as a child and a young person? You're not the most normal of archaeologists, if you'll forgive my observation. I know not what you mean, not normal, honestly. And I imagine your inspiration will extend beyond Indiana Jones and Lara Croft. Thanking you in advance, Catherine K. Well, Catherine, thank you for your question. As I say, I usually don't answer questions about me on video, just because it feels a little bit self-indulgent. But in this instance, I think it will probably help to highlight that the final premise that you make there, that the idea of there being a normal archaeologist is really a very questionable one. I've never met an archaeologist, or indeed a human being, who is the same as another one. But more to the point, I've never heard an archaeologist talk about their route into archaeology and relay the same sequence of events to me. I think archaeology, more than many other topics actually, and many other professions, is one which not only is difficult to approach, and therefore you can approach it from many different ways, but also I think it draws in people from many different backgrounds with many different experiences in life and at many different times in their life. Some people know they want to be an archaeologist from a very young age. They know what an archaeologist is indeed from a very young age. And others may well find it throughout their life and their career, and others still may even come to archaeology having decided that they want to do something having retired from their main career. They want to pursue archaeology having always wanted to be one, and therefore they go and do a bit of studying, and then they get into it that way. So I think, if nothing else, hopefully this video will, and indeed the comments below, will help to expel that notion of there being a normal archaeologist. But yes, okay, in my case, I think I've always shown an interest in history and heritage. For example, so I'm told, when I was a toddler, around about the age of 5, I gave an impromptu tour to people in Beeston Castle in Cheshire. We were visiting, and apparently I started talking to people about what different things were. You know, that's the gatehouse, this is a doorway, this was a fireplace, here was a hinge. And we went from space to space, and these people supposedly followed me round, no doubt sort of going, oh, isn't that cute? But clearly I've always had some sort of interest, therefore, and possibly even a need to discuss my interest and share my interest with others. But I think this question got me thinking about what were the seeds. I think more than just a direct inspiration, what were the seeds which sort of led me to becoming an archaeologist? Because for a long time I was actually going to be an artist. I was on the track to being an artiste. I was going to be, or to being an architect actually. I even at one point after high school applied to go into art college, but thankfully that went all pear-shaped. I took a year out and finally honed in on the fact that I wanted to be an archaeologist. But I think the seeds had always been there. And in particular, what I think of when I think of these things is a book called Henry's Quest. It's a children's book. and it's one of my favourite books of all time, hence I've got it here with me today. It is a book unlike any other. I've never seen a book quite like it. It's a children's book where it's set in a sort of a future where industrialisation has reversed. There's been some sort of catastrophe, and the world has changed, or at the very least Britain has changed forever. And we start out with Henry, and he's in this little kingdom surrounded by a forest, and King Arthur II, and they all know about the legend of King Arthur, you see. King Arthur II, self-appointed, has sent Henry and some knights out to try and find petrol. And it's always spelt in capital letters, petrol. What is petrol? And as Henry travels, what he's trying to do is to find these things to fuel these machines back in his kingdom, because they want to know what they are. And as he travels, he comes across, for example, here I'm looking at a British Airways jet which has been fitted out as a living quarters, basically, as a giant, I suppose, an apartment block on its side. There's an electricity pylon which has been turned into a fort, and Henry even comes across a petrol station which has been turned into a little barn where animals are being stored and fed. There's a milking shed, actually, sorry. And he's asking the person who's milking a cow, do you know about petrol? And no, they don't. So as the story proceeds, there are various images which really stuck with me, and one in particular, which I think actually haunted me as a child, is one where Henry and his donkey are running away from a bear in what I think used to be a safari park. This old house has been overtaken by ivy. And the look on the donkey's eyes just stuck with me as a child, it really did. But the whole story, I think, the reason why it stuck with me was that it was a direct challenge. I won't ruin the story. If you want to go and find it, I really recommend it. But it was a direct challenge to the idea of permanence, that somehow our society is immortal, that it will continue forever unchanged and unfettered by progress or disaster or shifts in evolution, this kind of thing. So I think that's probably the earliest thing which actually led me to want to be an archaeologist, was Henry's quest. So if you want to try and find it, give it a go. I'm sure it'll be somewhere on eBay or something like that. It's a great book. So Henry's quest was probably the earliest inspiration, the earliest seed, which kind of challenged the idea that how we live now and who we are today hasn't always been that way and won't always be that way. Another early challenge to that, another inspiration for me, was the Osborns Children's Encyclopedia. I read this book until it was nearly destroyed. You can see the spine here is ruined. And in this book, not only have they got some wonderful sections on, for example, ancient Egypt, Rome, and actually the life systems on the planet and how old the planet is. They've also got some wonderful sections on how people live in other cultures, and in particular there's a page here that I'm looking at which is a drawing supposedly of a village in Ghana at the time, of course, and I remember being fixated by this particular picture because this little compound is bisected by a wall, and I remember thinking, how do people live with this wall separating the compound in two? And again, as a very small child, you know, we were talking 5 to 10 years old, it just fascinated me, and you could see the people on the outside, they're painting their huts, and again, it's all about that idea of challenge, that seed really of inspiration, that people aren't always the same as they are now, and that people won't always be the same, and that people indeed across space, never mind time, aren't the same. So I think that's really one of the key things that got me or rather put me on the path to becoming an archaeologist. That and Tintin. I won't show you all my Tintin books, but as much as Indiana Jones and Lara Croft are inspirations, for me, Hergé's Tintin, or Hergé, is a wonderful inspiration. Tintin is a bit like Marmite. Some people love him, some people hate him. I personally love him. I love the wit in the books. And this particular one, Flight 714, was the first one I ever read. And it's about, yes, aliens and sort of, you know, Mayans, this kind of idea. But let's face it, people, you know, pseudo ideas are often very charismatic. So this whole thing really, again, just planted the seeds. It got me inspired and led me to want to eventually become an archaeologist. So there are books, and I'm sure books have inspired many of us, many archaeologists, and actually a book which not only inspires me now, or books which not only inspire me then rather, but also inspire me now, are the horrible histories. For example, the Cutthroat Celts. I won't show you all the horrible histories books that I've got, but I've said it before and I'll say it again. If you want to start to learn about a period of history, you can do a lot worse than looking at a horrible histories book, because it's interesting, innately fun, and it does actually tell you something about a period in time. Then, obviously, you can go and look at things in more depth. But I would always recommend starting with horrible histories. Actually, that's where I started when I wanted to learn, for example, about the Vikings. So, books. You know, obviously that's an inspiration, and I'm convinced that some of the most powerful winds in my sail towards becoming an archaeologist actually come from those books and that really young, formative age. But also there are people, there are loads of people who have inspired me. So for example, I remember my granddad once gave me a key to an unknown lock. He said, "Here's a key." I said, "What did it unlock?" He was, "I don't know." And that just, it set my imagination going. I was trying to find where would this key fit. I was trying to imagine how, whether or not the building would even still be standing for this key, or whether it was a cupboard or a safe, or if I was to find the lock, how would I actually confirm that the key worked? And short of actually putting it in, was there some sort of design that I could identify, this kind of thing? So that really again got my mind racing, and it was this idea of, I suppose, object biographies, the idea that things have lives and that things are connected. Again, a very archaeological idea. I remember walking by a river with a family friend when I was about 11 to 13, that kind of age, and he showed me essentially stratigraphy. He showed me the layers in the riverbank, and further down pulled out some Victorian glass and pottery and said, "Here you go, that's old, that is." And again, that was an inspiration. It was just these little moments in my childhood that led me to being an archaeologist. My mum, of course, my wonderful mum, constantly allowing me to bring home all sorts of bits and bobs, not least, of course, bones. The number of sheep and, I presume, fox and dog and all sorts of random ass bones that I brought home with me. She allowed me to clean them up, as long as they were cleaned up, possibly bleach them a bit, and draw them. And this one, actually, this is the first bone I ever drew when I was in high school, actually. And I love it. This is why I still have it with me today. But nonetheless, my mum has been a huge inspiration and certainly a huge catalyst in allowing me to pursue these interests, which sometimes may well seem as though they're veering towards the more morbid side of life. But more, I was just fascinated with bones, with that permanence of remains, or that semi-permanence, and what you could tell from remains. What animal is this kind of thing. I also remember, in particular, there was a conversation that I had with one of my art teachers, Ms. A. I won't go any further than that, you know who you are. And we were talking actually about how things had changed, that we were going through it, we were shifting in terms of art mediums and also how things could be recorded. And in particular, we were talking about video and DVD at the time, and how a video is still visible. If you hold up a video reel to the light, you can still see a frame in the video, in the reel there, or celluloid, that kind of thing. But a digital disc, a DVD, is no longer in the purview of human understanding. It's been removed. It's become something which must be read using a tool. Has to be. And of course, a video should be watched using a video player, but nonetheless, there's that intrinsic difference. It's not something that you can see anymore. Now it has to be interpreted. And again, those sort of deeper philosophical questions and conversations, which in my later high school years would lead me to want to explore these in the realm of archaeology, really were an inspiration. So thank you very much, Ms. A. Now, there are many other people who have encouraged me throughout the years, and there are too many really to name. But really, this is an excellent way to sort of round up the video, I suppose, and that is just to say, as I say, or rather as I suspected at the beginning, there is no normal route into being an archaeologist, and in this instance, I'm certainly not abnormal at all. I think the overarching theme here is that those people who encouraged curiosity, those people who encouraged inquiry, those people who didn't frown and look at me strangely when I wanted to, for example, pick up a bone in a field, were wonderful. And those were the people really that got me into archaeology, that sort of led me on my way to being the person who I am today, a fairly rounded human being. So, yeah, thank you very much, Catherine Kay, for asking the question. It's been a pleasure thinking about some of these things. Hopefully I haven't bored you guys to tears too much. And this has been a great way just to ease my way back into the questions of doom rhythm, as it were. So, thank you. Now, if you want, please do feel free to share below your thoughts and comments, any ideas that you, or any experiences rather, that you've had which led you into archaeology. And I'm sure Catherine Kay, but certainly I, would love to read them. I'd love to hear about how you became an archaeologist, so please do comment. Now, it is snowing here at Archaeosoup Towers, and you may be able to hear the angle grinder at work again. They lied to me, but hopefully none of this has ruined the video. I'm going to go out and enjoy the snow. You guys hopefully will enjoy the video, and please do comment below. Until next time, bye bye.